Coming up on this episode, Brandin Podziemski has outlined some fairly ambitious goals in regards to his three-point shooting next season. I'll go through that and question whether he should be more focused on another aspect of his game after the Warriors' off-season departures. Welcome back to the Golden State with Mates podcast. Been nearly a week since the last episode. Thought I'd just take a little bit of a break after so many episodes throughout July and early August. Obviously, things across the NBA have slowed down quite substantially over the past few weeks here, and that certainly has been the case for the Warriors as well. Perhaps the most notable thing from a Golden State standpoint, at least roster-wise, over the past 48 hours is news that the franchise is working out Brazilian big man Bruno Caboclo after a very impressive Olympic campaign where he was 8th in scoring across the tournament, 6th in rebounds per game. Had a 30-piece against Team USA, which may have kind of drawn the attention of Steph Curry and Steve Kerr, and obviously the Warriors now getting him in this week to do some training with the franchise with the hopes from his perspective of getting a contract. Now, it's very interesting. His manager revealed that Caboclo is confident of getting a contract with the Warriors. However, I'd imagine that's nothing more than a training camp invite if that does eventuate over the next couple of days, a training camp contract, simply because the Warriors, given their position, yes, they do have a roster spot available, but they are right up against the first tax apron where they're hard capped at. They don't have the ability to go out and sign Caboclo or anyone else based on where they're at right now. So I'm assuming that would be a training camp invite and then maybe a battle. I wrote about this earlier for BlueManHoop.com. If Caboclo wants to deal with the Warriors, of course, he's not eligible for a two-way contract. It may have to come at the expense of Guy Santos. Santos is now the only player on the Golden State roster who's got a non-guaranteed deal for next season, which means the Warriors can waive him at any time and not have to deal, obviously, with his salary for next season. Lindy Waters III was, when the Warriors traded for him back on draft day in June, his contract was non-guaranteed at that point, but that has since become guaranteed, I think, according to Spotrac anyway. So Guy Santos is really the only one the Warriors can waive and then bring in another free agent, whether that be Caboclo or anyone else. So kind of unfortunate situation maybe that Bruno Caboclo's best shot at reigniting his NBA dream, at least with the Warriors, may come down to the Warriors having to get rid of his national teammate, Keith Santos, in order for that to happen. I think it would be very unlikely. Again, maybe Caboclo gets a camp invite, but even then that would be strange because he does obviously have deals on the table from other European teams. And if I was his manager, I'd probably be pressing towards that, given that I personally, now, yes, his manager would be believing in him and believing that he can do it, but I personally believe the Warriors just aren't in a situation where they're going to take on Bruno Caboclo or anyone else. I think this is the roster we'll see entering next season. There's no real point battling it out in training camp unless you want a two-way contract where it's obviously more flexible. You can, the Warriors do have 3 two-way contracts at the moment, but you can substitute them in and out as you need to, as we saw a couple of seasons ago, where someone like Lester Quinones at this point of the offseason had a two-way contract and then ended up going back to the G League and not having a two-way deal because the Warriors instead chose to go with Anthony Lamb and Ty Jerome just before the start of the season. So there's flexibility there, but in terms of the main roster spots, there's no real flexibility outside of waiving Guy Santos, and I just don't think the Warriors are going to do that, at least not for Bruno Caboclo, who hasn't played in an NBA game for nearly I think it's over 3.5 years now. It's like January 2021. Very impressive at the Olympics, yes. Hope he gets another NBA opportunity. I just doubt that it will be with the Warriors, but good luck to him. The other, perhaps even more interesting stuff that came out earlier today was an interview that Brandin Podziemski did with the Athletic's Anthony Slater, going through a whole heap of stuff. And Brandon's really good. Brandon's really good in the media because he is happy to speak his mind. He's happy to answer basically anything. He's really candid and open in his conversations in all these dealings, particularly with what he's been going through this offseason in terms of the trade rumors. He's been really open and honest and upfront about it, and that is absolutely fantastic. And so a lot of this interview with Slater was about those trade rumor questions. Sounds like the Warriors the entire time were very steadfast and open with him in saying that, hey, we want you around. There's nothing for you to worry about. There was the revelation that Warrior owner Joe Lacob met with the Jazz owner in Summer League, had dinner with him, and then basically came back from that and told Pods again, hey, you're ours. You're not going anywhere. Mike Dunleavy Jr. Made the same point after the draft, where apparently a heap of teams offered up mid to high value first round picks for Pods. Now, that was never going to be the case. I don't think the Warriors were ever going to give up Pods for any kind of draft picks unless it was maybe a top 5 pick. But even then, like, you look at the draft, it's just been here, not a very strong one. What would Pods go if he was in this year's rookie class? He'd have to go top 10, you would think. So I just don't think that was ever going to be on the table, but it was more so obviously the marketing and stuff. And the Warriors pretty steadfast. They were never going to give up Brandin Podziemski for Lauri Markkanen. So I think Pods' ability to read the room, read the situation, literally read what people are saying about him on social media and the media in general. I think he's a very aware young person, and I think that's a huge benefit because it's only going to give him more motivation, really, to strive to be successful. And we've seen his rate of improvement over the last few years here that's been absolutely amazing. And hopefully, from a Warriors perspective, he can reach the kind of level that we've been talking about this offseason in terms of him wanting to be in that star category, be in the most improved conversation next season. And obviously Joe Lacob mentioning him as an all-star caliber player in the future as well. So how does he necessarily get to that point? Well, another one of these, probably the biggest thing that came from this interview with Slater was the 3-point shot and his need, I suppose, or the Warriors, not need, but wish for him to up his attempts next season. He averaged 3.2 attempts per game last season. And he had this quote with Slater that basically said, hey, they want me to take 8 to 10 3-point attempts next season per game, which immediately jumped off the page as, wow, okay, that's ambitious. That's tripling your 3-point attempts. There were 16 players in the league last season who took 8 or more threes per game. Only 5, I think, took more than 9 threes per game, which was Steph, Luka, Klay, Donovan Mitchell, and LaMelo. I think were right on that 9 3-point attempts per game. So all of a sudden, you're throwing Pods into the mix of the most elite level 3-point shooters in the league. And I mean, is he going to be doing that in his second year? I think we all have our doubts that he'll be getting to that level. But it does go to show you, he's a very ambitious individual. I think the Warriors have high hopes for him. And if he is to get to an all-star level, clearly he's already an elite rebounder, puts his body on the line, draws charges, good ball handler and playmaker. The question mark on whether he's going to continue as a high-level role player or whether he's going to be a legitimate star is going to come down to the scoring, and therefore a lot of that is going to come down to the 3-point shot and whether he can get his scoring average from 9.2 per game last season to double that, closer to 20 points per game. And obviously, 3-point shooting is going to be huge in that. He spoke about trying to remove the floaters and some of the interesting sky hooks that he took at points last season. I don't want things to go too far here where he's striving too hard to get to the 8 to 10 3-point attempts per game, because yes, that might be the goal for him and the Warriors. That might be their wish, but that's not a necessity from my perspective. And I've spoken about this already previously, is that you look at Klay Thompson going out and everyone thinks, oh, there's a massive gulf in 3-point shooting that you've just lost. And from a quality standpoint, yes, certainly Klay Thompson is one of the top 3 to 5 best shooters in the history of the game. There's no doubt about that. But from just simply a quantity standpoint, taking Klay's 3-point attempts out and what you bring in, well, you bring in Buddy Hield, who took 7 threes a game last season and has made the most threes in the league over the last 5 years. You bring in DeAnthony Melton, who's averaged over 5 3-point attempts in each of the past 2 seasons with the 76ers. Wiggins, if he regresses to the mean kind of thing where he, in his career with the Warriors, he's averaged over 5 threes per game. That dropped to 3.6 last season. If that just goes back to normal levels, then there's another couple of threes per game. Like those 3 in particular, even before we get to Pods, that's probably making up Klay's departure, right? In just those 3 players, if not more. And let alone, obviously, you bring Pods into the mix. Maybe Kuminga improves his 3-point shot. Maybe there's an extra 1 or 2 there. Maybe Draymond improves his 3-point shooting again. Who knows? But what I'm saying is there's variety here. There's options for the Warriors. Yes, they're not completely bringing back someone of Klay's level of 3-point shooting, albeit Buddy Hield is a very, very, very good 3-point shooter. In fact, you could argue he's an elite 3-point shooter. In fact, I'm going to say he is. Maybe not Klay's level, but you get the point right here. Like there is a variety here where the Warriors can look at a number of different options to try and fill the void that Klay is going to leave. And it doesn't necessarily just have to be on Pods. Pods doesn't need to look at this and think, oh, well, okay, I'm going to need to put up the same amount of 3-point attempts as Klay did last season. I'm going to be in his role starting shooting guard. Therefore, I need to put up this amount of 3-point attempts. That's not the case. In fact, my bigger concern for Pods isn't the 3-point shooting. It's actually the ball handling and the playmaking and replacing Chris Paul, because that's what I see as him doing more so next season. Not replacing Klay in the 3-point attempts, but replacing Chris Paul as the backup point guard behind Steph, which is why I still have question marks on whether Pods should be starting next to Steph or not. But I think we can all probably understand at this stage that's the plan, and then that he'll also, take an early rest and then come back and replace Steph as the primary backup point guard. I don't know if they've got other plans outside of that. I fail to see what it is. Melton played a bit of point guard earlier in his career. I don't think he's going to be doing that. Are they going to be playing Kyle Anderson as a more of a point forward off the bench? I don't know, but that is what it looks like right now, is Pods is the backup point guard. I would be more focused on that and him trying to replace CP3 than I am him trying to get up the same amount of 3-point attempts as Klay Thompson did last season. I think that should be the primary focus. I don't think there's the necessity. It would be great if he can get up to 8, 10 3-point attempts per game and that he can retain that shooting percentage that he shot 38.5% last season. That's going to be the crucial thing, because if all of a sudden he goes 8, 10 3-point attempts per game and he's dipping under 35%, that's going to be a detriment to the team. That's going to be a legit detriment to the team because they don't need it. They don't need him to go to 8, 10 threes per game. Ideal, yes, sure, that can be the goal. But you've got Buddy Hield, you've got DeAnthony Melton, you've got Andrew Wiggins hopefully returning and having a bounce-back season. They don't need him to go to 8-10. So it's an ambitious goal, and it's one that they can certainly set, and hopefully that, comes to fruition. But they don't need that. And so early on, if he looks like he's striving to get to those 8, 10 threes per game, and as a result, the percentage is dipped below 35%, well, that's something you're going to have to rectify pretty quickly, because that's going to be a detriment to the team. It really is. And so there's striking a balance here, right, between the quantity and the quality at the end of the day. And of the 16 players that averaged over 8 3-point attempts last season across the league, only 6 of them made better than Pods' 38.5% from 3 last season. So clearly, if you're going to take more, if you're going to take close to 8 to 10 or whatever, even if it's 6 or 7, obviously we should expect a slight dip, particularly if he's going to take tough ones. Like a lot of his 3-point attempts last season would have been wide open. There were times last season where I and other fans were really critical of him passing up on open 3-point attempts. So he was really only taking them when he was wide open. His 3-point shot diet is going to be more difficult next season. So therefore, we should see a reduction in his 3-point percentage. But I still think you're hoping that it's at least above 35, if not 36 minimum, hopefully closer to that 40%. If it all of a sudden dips under 35%, that's when we're going to have issues. And so it's going to be super fascinating. My main takeaway is I want him to focus. I personally want him to focus more on replacing CP3 than replacing Klay. And I don't think he has to do like both. I don't think he has to do one or the other. He's his own player. He doesn't need to replace both guys. The Warriors, the quality of their roster, the positive about their roster right now is they do have depth and they do have guys that can cover different avenues in regards to Klay's three-point shooting. Less so on CP3 because there's not actually too many primary point guards on the roster, which again is why if I'm Pods, I'm more focused on that than I'm necessarily about, jacking up as many threes as I can. But I think that was certainly the most fascinating thing to come from Slater's article. Not the trade stuff about marketing and stuff, because we've got that. We've gone past that to a degree. We understand that Pods has listened and heard all of that. He's been very open and candid about it. But the 8 to 10 threes per game is a very specific goal to set that we can track throughout the course of next season. So it's going to be interesting. Like, I think we've seen this kind of stuff in the past. Where was it last season or the year before where Anthony Davis said, I'm going to get up 6 threes a game, and then get up like 6 threes every couple of weeks. Like, sometimes these things are just, said for the sake of things, I think. But I think everything Pod says, there's intent behind it, right? And if he seems like such a driven young person that if he says something like this, he's going to want to back it up and prove it and say, yep, okay, I set this goal and I delivered on it. Okay, now watch me do this. And I just think that's probably how he's focused on things over the last couple of years, going back to his college days. And I think that's fantastic. I think it's fantastic that he's got these goals in mind from an individual and a team aspect that he wants to follow. Thanks very much for listening to this episode, guys, or watching on YouTube. If you haven't subscribed already, that would be greatly appreciated. You can follow me at POK252. That's POK252 on X/Twitter, and I'll see you on the next episode.